Director Cheatle, the American people
Sound is okay, everybody?
And they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheatle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question.
She's not going to
Both
answer.
sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the
Colossal.
question. Yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible.
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure?
Who's this
yes
woman?
or no?
Yes.
Was this
Oh, she
tragedy
said yes.
preventable? Yes or no?
Yes.
Has the
Wow.
Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
No.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent? Yes or no?
I have always been.
Yes
eager to
or no?
come
You didn't
and
want to
talk
answer the
committee.
question. We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political? Yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr.
She
Chairman,
cussed.
I would like to ask unanimous consent
She
to enter into
cussed.
the record articles by
Nice.
Punchbowl News, Political Playbook,
Nice.
Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection to ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
I like how she does this.
Yes.
Okay. You say
Chuck,
fully
since you're the
cooperating with
expert, who
committee.
is this woman?
On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee
Who
a
is this
complete
woman,
list of
Chuck?
all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or
I
no?
will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings
She's
in your
vicious, huh?
possession to
Do
this
we
committee?
like her
as
or
we
not?
asked on
Miss
July 15th?
Mace?
Yes or no?
Never heard of her.
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely
Oh, she
dishonest.
said full of shit.
You're
Chairman.
completely
Mr.
dishonest.
Chairman.
She's
I
cussing.
Mr. I'm
Come
gonna
on.
We have to
continue.
maintain
I think I'm
decorum in
alive.
this committee,
It-
no matter
Have
how
you
upset.
provided
Yeah, we need
Yeah,
to
this is,
maintain decorum,
Nancy-
right?
We've asked you on July
This is
15th. Have you
Nancy
provided all
Mace.
memorandums within the Secret
She's
Service?
South
I would
Carolina.
have.
She's senator or what is she? Do we know? Or Congress?
If
Wow.
she's sitting in that chair, ain't she a senator? Doesn't that pretty much, that's who's here, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. This is a congressional hearing.
Oh no, yeah, it's not
Committee.
senators, it's Congress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so got it. But here's the thing. I mean, it's pretty exciting to hear this woman cuss, but let's be honest, man. The whole point of Congress is so you don't have to cuss and yell and scream like a bunch of monkeys. But anyways, I'm glad we can cover this live.
To get back to you on
That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. Like you're being
Yes,
dishonest here with this
dishonest and
committee.
lying.
These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the
Is
Secret
Oracle
Service
here?
related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this
Hey,
committee? We've
what's up,
asked for this
Based Oracle?
information
Welcome to
on
the
July
show.
15th. Have you provided any
Glad
of this
to have you.
information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you. on
Have
that.
you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. The answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So was this attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All
we
right.
need to determine.
How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation,
Oh,
and we will
this
make
is
the changes
comedy.
necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the
Yeah.
time law
I didn't
enforcement
get that
found
from
some
the
photos of
news.
Crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes.
This is
Thank you, Mr.
1.25
Chairman,
speed,
and I yield back.
FYI,
Gentle lady, yield back.
everybody.
Before I recognize Mr.
Trying to get-
Stansberry, I
trying to
believe
get
I want
back to
recognize
to
Mr.
live.
Infume for a unanimous consent.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg your indulgence. I meant to
There
do
we
this
go.
earlier. I'd
Maryland,
like to
that's
have
my
unanimous
guy,
consent
Fume.
that it be submitted for the record. The 2023 ranking of best and worst workplaces in the federal government, compiled by the Office of Personnel Management, which shows the United States Secret Service coming in, again, as I said earlier, 413th out of 459 sub-agencies, and this appears in the July 17th edition of Government Examiner.
Without objections ordered.
How
Chair
do
now
you
recognizes Ms.
measure? How do you
Stansberry from
measure
New
that?
Mexico.
It's just, I don't,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
what is that going to do?
You know, I want to start by just saying that
They
part of why
survey
you have
federal
bipartisan
employees.
agreement here on the dais about the severity and importance of this hearing is because this is not just a single shooting. This is about national security and the security of our democracy. It's not just one operational failure. This is about our public officials safe. And what does that signal to our country and to the world about American security and the ability of our officials to do their job safely? So I want to start by saying thank you to all of our brave men and women who are in the uniform, whether it's the Secret Service or local law enforcement who put their lives on the line. I think obviously we honor their service, but this
I
is
think
really
it's
about
fume,
operational
like fume
failures
blanc,
and what it means
like,
for our country
that's
at large.
French for smoke.
And I also want to reaffirm that we must condemn
Fume blanc.
unequivocally political
Or
violence
is
of
it
any kind,
infume?
violence
I
of
don't know,
any kind,
actually.
not just political violence,
I guess
and
it's
that
an
it cannot
African
be
name, right?
tolerated in
Infume.
this democracy. And also to offer my prayers for the slain Fire Chief Corey Comprator, and also prayers for those who've been injured. Now, I think, you know, the tone of this hearing is, how is it that a 20-year-old young man with a gun that was legally purchased by his father could, on the day of a rally, go to a gun shop, legally purchase ammunition, show up to a secured site, and then not only attempt an assassination of a political figure, but kill and injure 2 others? How could this happen? I'm not asking yet. I think we've had a lot of testimony here today. I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. Now, here's what we
Yo,
know.
what's
And I
up,
know,
Bill? Welcome
Director,
to the
you
show.
were also on the call that we had a few days ago
I
with
gotta
the
mute you
FBI
unless
and
you
other
have
law
headphones.
enforcement. So I respect that you are not able to share, based on your testimony, some of the details that are currently being investigated. But I know you were on the call because I heard you on the call and you heard them too. So I'm going to lay out the timeline a little bit. On
I can't
July
mute you. Why
3rd,
can't I mute
the
you?
rally was announced that it was going to be in Butler. On July 6th, 3 days later, we know that the shooter searched for dates for Trump and DNC events. On July 7th, so this is 4 days after the announcement, the shooter went to the site. He actually physically went to the site. On July 12th, the shooter went to a gun range where he and his dad regularly go and practiced shooting. And the next day, on July 13th, he went to the site again before the rally began. We know that he then went and searched online for a gun store, where he went and he purchased 50 rounds of ammunition, went home, got his father's AR, which was legally purchased, and returned to the venue. At 5 p.m. that evening, this is more than an hour before Donald Trump actually took the stage that evening, local law enforcement were made aware that there was a suspicious man. In fact, at 5:20, local law enforcement flagged that he had a rangefinder, and they radioed their concerns and sent around pictures of the individual. At 5:40, 20 minutes before local law enforcement actually identified the shooter, and at 5:51, Secret Service was notified of the suspicious person by the state police, and 1 minute later, they distributed that information. That was before Donald Trump even took the stage. That was 11 minutes before he took the stage. So the Secret Service was aware that there was a suspicious person. At 6:03, he took the stage. At 6:09, rallygoers, as was shown in the video, identified this gentleman climbing on the roof. At 6:11, 3 shots were heard, 3 rounds of shots. And of course, the president and the other victims were shot. This shooter was a 20-year-old young man, no criminal record, legally purchased gun and ammunition, who for days in the lead up to this shooting was searching mass shooters. He even had a picture of a mass shooter on his cell phone the day of the shooting. He searched for explosives. He searched high-level officials.
I didn't know any of this.
So the
Did you
American
guys know
people
this?
want to know, how did a 20-year-old young man with access to a military-style weapon actually
There's a
bring it
lot
onto an
missing, though.
unsecured perimeter who for days
Oh
had been
yeah,
planning
this is
a
common
mass shooting
knowledge.
event? And I think
Oh,
that,
I didn't know that.
Madam Director, with all due respect, the answers that we've received here
I've just been so excited over this whole Biden quits thing, man. This is like took a backseat.
in this hearing today are completely unsatisfactory. How could this happen? We need answers. We need answers not just for the family members of the gentleman who was killed and those who were injured, but we need answers for our democracy. Because as others have stated here today, we are in a highly politically charged environment right now. We are only weeks away from one of the most significant presidential elections in American history. And it is clear that our public officials' safety has not been secured.
What's up,
And it is
Izzy?
not just a matter of one shooting, it is a matter of national security. So I hope that you will take our comments to heart. I hope that there will be accountability, and we need answers. And with that, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cheatle, I have a question just right off the bat. Something that you've bragged about repeatedly is that you've increased protection for the 36 individuals that the Secret Service is also entrusted with. Is that correct?
I think I stated that we currently have 36 protectees and that we continue to make evaluations on where those levels of protection are provided.
You've mentioned specific increases in protection that you've provided for some of those individuals, correct?
Correct.
Based on what?
Well, some of it has been as a result of the tragic incident that occurred on the 13th. We went back and reassessed where we were at in providing protection and wanted to make sure that we were not, overlooking anything, considering this most recent incident.
So the Secret Service needed to learn that allowing a rooftop 150 yards away from a protectee, not putting that in a perimeter, not having
Lol.
someone guarding that roof, that
Lol.
information is new to you, and it's caused you to increase
Does
protection
this woman
to
even
other
shoot guns?
folks that are under your care.
I think it is prudent after any incident that occurs to go back and take a look at your current practices and see if there is anything that needs to be done differently.
It's inconsistent because what you said earlier to Mr. Turner was that the protection that you were offering to President Trump was in line with the current threats, him being a former president, him being a nominee of a major political party, the threats from Iran, the protection that you're providing him was adequate. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it's a problem that the Americans' trust in the federal government is an all-time low? Do you think that's a problem?
I think that it's unfortunate.
I don't know why you're quibbling with my word. Is it a problem or is it not?
She's quibbling.
I think the American public deserves to have trust in our government.
Okay. I don't know why you're being difficult. I'm just, it's a simple question. Are you concerned
Lol.
about the increasing prevalence of conspiracy theories going on out there right now?
Right?
Yes.
I am too. You've been
Yes.
incredibly inconsistent with your answers before this committee today and what you were willing to reveal. You've acknowledged that the shooter was identified with a rangefinder, that President Trump's detail was sufficient for the threats he faced from Iran, that certain details were erroneously reported, in your words, but you haven't been willing to provide any information about the decision to place the building in question outside the perimeter, the explosives placed in the shooter's vehicle, the use of a drone by the shooter, or when exactly the Secret Service identified the shooter as a threat rather than merely suspicious. What is your standard today for what you are willing to answer and what you are not? Because you've been inconsistent.
I'm certain that you can understand that some of the information that's been provided to you thus far has come from the FBI's investigation and has come from information that we have released. I want to make sure that information that is being provided to this committee is consistent and is factual.
But the question about the drone that the chairman asked at the beginning of the hearing, he said, do you know this information? And you acknowledge that, yes, you do know the information, you just don't want to tell us. I guess my question is that if you wanted to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, which you've acknowledged you're drawing conclusions right now and making changes. But if that was your standard, that you want to wait till the end of the investigation to draw conclusions, okay, at least you would be consistent in that. But what we're wanting to know today, and what would dispel some of the conspiracy theories out there, what would increase trust with the American people, is for you to let facts out, for you to tell us what you know. And I want to understand from you, why is that a problem? Why is it inconsistent with a quality investigation to release to the American people today, at least the information that you know for sure? Because you certainly know for sure more information than you're willing to give us today.
I have released that there was a failure and that there are gaps that we need to make sure that they don't happen again.
That's not acceptable. That's not enough. That doesn't quell any conspiracy theories out there. In your 27 years of experience, would you have been concerned about an elevated location within 150 yards of a protectee that did not have a Secret Service presence? Just based on your experience.
What I can tell you is that every site and every venue
No.
is
I'm
advanced
asking
differently.
for your experience. Looking at this situation, would that have been of concern to you? Or would you have agreed that it's fine, it doesn't need to be covered?
What I have explained today
You're
is
not
that
going to answer.
there was.
Is it true that at 5:45 p.m., approximately 18 minutes before President Trump took the stage, the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit noticed the shooter on the roof and photographed him? Is that a fact or not?
That is the information that I have from the FBI's report, yes.
You haven't been willing to share whether or when this was communicated to the Secret Service. So I'd like to get into the difference between suspicious activity and threatening activity. Is it suspicious or threatening if an individual is seen around the perimeter with a rangefinder? Is that just suspicious?
That could be termed as suspicious.
If that same individual with the rangefinder is found on a rooftop, is that still just suspicious, or is that considered threatening?
That could be termed still as suspicious.
All right, my time is over. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And obviously, I want to start by stressing that political violence is always unacceptable, and acknowledging that this is still an ongoing investigation. But oversight hearings like this are essential components of an investigation, and I want to thank the chair for pulling this together. Madam Director, I appreciate you for being here. The events of July 13th raised serious questions about the efficacy and thoroughness of the security protocols in place. The gravity of the fact that an unsophisticated gunman was able to secure his perch and take a shot at a former president, despite multiple layers of security and intelligence, are not lost on me. Before I came to Congress, I used to work advance for a major political candidate and have interacted with many different law enforcement agencies on large political events like the one that just happened. How many times was the Secret Service alerted about a suspicious person at the July 13th campaign event prior to the first shot being shot?
I don't have an exact number to share with you today, but from what I've been able to discern, somewhere between 2 and 5 times there was some sort of communication about a suspicious individual.
To the Secret Service specifically.
Mhm.
According to reports, the shooter was photographed twice by security officers prior to the shooting. A police officer saw the shooter on the ground and reported him with a photograph as a suspicious person. Multiple local law enforcement officers identified the shooter, radioed that he was acting suspiciously near the event's magnetometers. A local law enforcement tactical team saw the shooter on a roof and notified other security services and also photographed him. One police officer who photographed the shooter saw him scoping out the roof and carrying a rangefinder. My question is, and you've answered this, but why, or you haven't answered this, why wasn't the event paused right then?
Again, I am not clear on the timeline of when the Secret Service shift and the counter sniper were notified.
But earlier, Madam Director, earlier you said that the Secret Service would have paused the rally if they identified a threat.
Correct.
So why wasn't it paused?
Because I have to assume that they did not know that there was a threat when they brought the president out on the stage.
I feel like this is a breakdown in communication between local law enforcement, you all, and other actors at the rally. And again, as someone who's worked on these, I understand that there's multiple people with multiple with the ability to make different decisions on the ground. Over the last week, I've spoken with a lot of folks in local law enforcement in my district and across the country that I've worked with before, and other people have brought up concerns around being able to communicate with Secret Service during these big events and having their flags taken seriously. I do believe that if Secret Service believed that there was a legitimate threat, that they would have paused the rally. My concern is before that something was flagged and it wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been taken. So I think this shows an issue with communication. And I want to know, Madam Director, what you intend to do to fix that, not in 60 days, but now. We are in the middle of a presidential election, obviously a former president who had an assassination attempt, another rally goer who was killed due to this gun violence. We now have a presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party who's also historic, first Black woman to be running for president. And so I am worried about everybody's life. What do y'all intend to do to fix this communication breakdown and making sure that you actually take what local law enforcement, local folks are saying more seriously?
We take what local law enforcement relays to us seriously. Let me just be clear on that. As far as the communication,
but not this time.
We always trust our law enforcement partners and have a great relationship with them. We are looking at whether or not there was a communication breakdown.
Nice.
If that was the case, we will take steps to ensure that we correct that, because to your point, we cannot have a communication breakdown.
Madam Director, does you mentioned that the perimeter of the event did not include the rooftop where the shooter was. Does your responsibility and the Secret Service's responsibility to protect the principal stop at the perimeter of an event?
Our responsibility is to ensure the safety and security of the event itself and the protectee who is attending that event and the personnel who are protecting.
So you would say the fact that the rooftop was outside the perimeter is not an excuse for what happened, saying that it was outside the perimeter of the event?
I am not offering that as an excuse.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes Mr. Fallon from Texas.
How did a 20-year-old loner with a week's notice pick the absolute best location to assassinate President Trump when the entire Secret Service missed it? Director Cheatle, in your leadership, your agency got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old. How can we have any confidence that you could stop trained professionals from a nefarious nation state?
You can't.
Those are absolutely questions.
Treadstone, yeah.
But the fact of the matter is we can't have that confidence.
Director,
do you have
who
the
was that
ability
guy?
personally, do you have the authority
Matt
to beef up
Damon?
security
What's that
of any of your
show?
protectees?
Yes,
That's
I do.
the board supremacy.
So were you
The
also aware there was a
board
criminal threat?
did the whole
President Trump
season
was
series.
facing heightened security threat to a foreign adversary?
Yes.
Okay. So given that there was
That's
an
a good point,
increased threat to
Chuck.
President
Me
Trump's
too.
life, was he provided a
too.
full security complement akin to what a sitting U.S. president would receive?
He was provided a full complement of security based on the threat assessment that we had
That's not my
and the
question.
venue.
My question is, if he
I think they want to act tough, Chuck, because they're the ones that are calling Trump the little mustache man, and I mean, really, they're the ones that make him seem like he's the worst thing that ever happened to America. And they are inciting violence. I mean, they are. They have convinced people that this Trump guy is like the worst thing ever. I mean, look, even if Notelos is here, he probably thinks he's like the worst thing ever. His brain is mush. He is just easily swayed, and the Dems are trying to act like they're not culpable in this, and maybe they are a little bit by convincing weirdos, 20-year-olds with rifles to do it, or maybe he was hired. I don't know. That's what's up.
You mean
sitting,
he's going to put them all in chains?
That's
You mean
yeah.
stuff like that?
That's the yeah. This is the kind of weird stuff that these Dems say and
You
dream
know,
up. He was already president and he didn't do it, so I don't know how they come up with
An
this
existential
method of thinking.
threat to democracy?
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to the whole
That's not
thing. Like,
inflammatory at all.
here's Notelos. I'm glad you heard me, Notelos. He was deranged conservative who drank a bunch of Kool-Aid. I love you, Notelos. All right, let's go.
being president, would he have had the same security he had on July 13th, or would have been beefed up?
There is a difference between the
So
sitting
he didn't. So
president
your answer is he did.
and continuity of government and the
So
responsibility
he
that we
did
have.
not. Okay, there wasn't a CAT team, a full CAT team on site. There wasn't counter surveillance teams on site. But this is the thing. You just said you had the ability to beef up the security. You knew about the threat, and you didn't. And that's as telling as it is chilling. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk
Notelos,
to
he was
that
paid
night?
by
Did
the
you talk to
Biden
team,
administration.
the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72
I'm
hours?
doing
after?
better, Beak, but I'm still
I don't
messed
know the
up, man.
timeline,
I got
but I spoke
Biden
with them.
Because you're under oath.
Immediately
I think it
following.
was 72 hours after
at
you
the
waited 3
Biden
days.
19
But it's
today.
immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site? What was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were?
Look, from what I understand so far is that they considered that roof covered because the sniper could look over and take out the threat, which he could. But the thing was, even at 130 yards, he was a little unsure. They saw it, but maybe they thought it was just some kid, a Trump fan, with binoculars or something.
I think they thought it was a Secret Service guy. I think they thought it was security on that roof. When they saw a guy with the gun, they just kind of shrugged it off because that's a perfect spot to put a security. That would be perfect.
Yeah, but that would have been briefed beforehand. The location of all those teams are told
I
where all the other
agree.
teams are going to be.
I
What
know.
it was.
I'm saying that the communication on the ground wasn't as smooth and cohesive as she wanted it to appear.
Oh yeah,
that it
there was a dam at the civil
nothing.
service or at the Secret Service. Information was flowing, but it wasn't getting into the Secret Service. They are the stopping point for this.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
We're worried about safety because of the slope.
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have a written policy to share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because isn't your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's the thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof.
Lol.
So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. You want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I
Why
was
would you
lying
shoot it
prone
once?
on a slope roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Comparatore life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was a nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Go back to Garden
Chair recognizes
Doritos?
Ms. Lee
What?
from Pennsylvania.
What is that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
She
I'd
works
like to
at
thank
that
He was head
for
of
the right manner
corporate
for coming together
security
and holding this
for
hearing.
PepsiCo.
But I have to say, I don't
Oh.
think any of our concerns have been addressed today, and what little we've learned has not inspired much confidence. I will just say that we obviously can't allow the violence we're seeing in this country become the norm or commonplace, but that seems to be where we're heading. On this occasion, it was, very shockingly, a former president and current political candidate at a rally that we all assume is one of the most secure places we can be. But the violence we saw last Saturday is the same culture of violence that makes too many of our kids and our community members feel unsafe to play outside or to go to class or to simply live their lives each day. But again, this was a political rally, and it is supposed to be one of the most secure places. So we do have very specific questions about that. Director Cheatle, I'd like to start by following up on some of my colleagues' questions. My colleagues, Mr. Krishnamurthy and Mr. Frost, highlighted a number of points that showed the shooter presenting an active threat. So I'd like to ask you, Director Cheatle, to clarify the protocol, what the
Smash or
protocol is
pass.
for postponing or canceling an event based on a threat, and how the events on July 13th didn't meet those standards.
You know, bro.
So again, I think we're talking about the distinction between suspicious behavior and a threat. And at the time that this individual was identified, they were displaying suspicious behavior. I'm still waiting for interviews from the FBI to determine what it was that identified that individual as suspicious and what those
Smash or
behaviors
pass.
Why
were.
is
To
she
that
waiting
question,
for
the
interviews
suspicious
and not
behavior-
holding
the
them
suspicious
herself?
behavior vary between different events. For instance, if we have an event with
Was
a
he
president
suspicious? He
with
had a
you're not
ladder
with
and a
heightened standard
rifle?
for suspicious
Lol.
behavior. I think that there are a number of ways that someone
How
can
much
be
does this woman
identified
get
as
paid?
suspicious, and it doesn't matter
I want to get my feelings
whether it's at a
hurt.
rally or an indoor event or who
Let's
the
find out how
protectee
much
is.
she gets paid.
I think it's up to law enforcement or citizens to identify someone as suspicious.
Okay, thank you. According to the Associated Press, at least 6 different agencies, including 2 sheriff's office, local police, state police, as well as fire and emergency rescue
No, she's not talking fast. I have it at 1.25. That because I'm trying to get caught up because I like to talk. That's all.
officials were
That's
involved in
not a
securing the
normal
rally
speed.
in Butler. When there are so many teams that are collaborating, who takes the lead and how is that determined?
The Secret Service is responsible for the security of the site and the
And-
coordination.
And that was the case on July 13th.
Correct.
Changing gears, in 2024's appropriations budget, the Secret Service was given a little over $3 billion, which was about $78 million above what was requested. For 2025's budget, you've requested yet another increase. How much of these funds goes towards training and improving protection procedures?
I would have to get back to you on the training aspect of it, but about 30% of our budget is for protection and facilities and training.
But clearly the problem can't be a lack of funding. So what exactly do you see as the core problem that led to this failure, that led to your agency being outgunned by a 20-year-old using his father's gun and acting on his own without a particularly sophisticated plan or technology?
I think that we are waiting to determine exactly what those failures or failure was so that we can make sure that the Secret Service is stronger after this.
So we've heard a lot today that you can't answer because it's an ongoing investigation, that you're still figuring out the details and that you won't answer basic questions. You said 60 days for the investigation, but I simply don't think that's acceptable. Do you really plan to keep avoiding questions and the American people's questions, ours and the American people's questions, for the next 60 days?
I'm not avoiding questions. I want to make sure that I am providing factual and accurate information.
Certainly, but is there no in between, right? Between what is obviously a fact and what you can surmise from the details that you already have?
I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of what took place on that day, I will certainly come back and make that available.
Certainly. Studies indicate that the United States is experiencing increasing levels of political violence and tension. Does the Secret Service see increasing political violence as a threat to its work? And if so, how is the Secret Service adapting its strategies and protocols to account for increasing political violence?
We are constantly evaluating the threats that we receive and monitoring that, and we make adjustments on a daily basis to our protectees based on what those threats are and what actions we need to take.
Yes or no? Do you believe that stricter controls on the availability of assault weapons would make it easier for the Secret Service to fulfill its missions of protecting public officials?
I think the Secret Service is tasked with providing a safe environment, which is why we put into place a number of mitigation factors.
Certainly, but do assault weapons make it easier or harder for you to do your job?
I think that any weapon makes it difficult for us to do our job.
What's up,
Okay,
Provo?
I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, real quick, at what time was Secret Service aware of the active threat against President Trump?
What's up, CCD?
Director, what time?
So the Secret Service was aware that there was an individual who had been identified as suspicious, and that individual was attempting to be tracked down.
At what time?
I don't have a specific timeline other than to tell
Director,
you-
it's been 9 days.
I
At
understand
what
that.
time?
I want to make sure that I give you factual information, sir.
Director, have you talked to the agents on the ground that day?
Yes, I have.
You've talked to all of them.
Mhm.
Your senior team has talked to every agent that was on the ground that
That's a
day.
lie.
Yes, we have.
Have they all corroborated the same time they identified the shooter or they were made aware of the shooter, either by attendees in the crowd or local police department?
There are a number of reports of when those times were made.
Was it
those
5 minutes
notifications.
before the first shot rang out?
No,
Generally speaking, was it 10 minutes before the first shot rang out?
no.
Was it
less-
15 minutes before the first shot rang out?
It was less than that time frame when it was identified as a threat.
How many days
Trash.
before the shooting took place did Secret Service actually do their advance work to secure the facility that the rally was going to be held at?
5 days.
In the 5 days prior, when the security advance team did their work, did they identify the rooftop as a potential threat?
Again, I'm pulling those reports and that information.
It's been 9
to
days,
conduct those
Madam
interviews.
Director. Did they notice a rooftop 150 yards away that was a potential threat? Yes or no?
I am certain that the rooftop was noticed. I am pulling the reports.
What was the security parameters around securing that rooftop?
There
What
was,
did they do?
there was overwatch provided for that rooftop.
Did Overwatch fail?
I am waiting to hear what the results of the investigation were so that I can identify where the failure was.
Who did you talk to that was on the ground that day that was responsible for Overwatch? What are their names?
I'm not going to provide their names in this setting.
Did you talk to the people that were providing Overwatch that day?
I've talked to the people that conducted the advance on that day and that were working the shift and were the counter snipers on that day.
So you talked to the counter sniper team. You talked to the people who were providing Overwatch that day, and you talked to the advance team, correct?
Yes, sir.
What did they tell you?
We are putting together a comprehensive report so that I can identify exactly where the gaps and the failures.
When the counter sniper team was on the roof and they identified that there was suspicious activity on the roof in question, what was the chain of commands orders around the person on said roof? Because I'm quite sure somebody saw in under your organization, the Secret Service, I'm quite sure somebody saw the shooter on the roof. So what was the communication through the chain of command to deal with said person?
What I can tell you is that when the individual was identified by the counter sniper, they took one shot and neutralized that individual.
But that was after the shooter already took a shot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what you're saying now is that the Secret Service did not see the shooter on the roof until after the shooter took a shot?
I do not have all of those details at this time.
If you don't have those details after 9 days, Director, then what you're telling me is that you guys didn't see it. Is that correct?
I am telling you, I don't have all the details of the sequence
If
at this time.
Director,
If
it's
she
been
doesn't
9
quit,
days. Either you have the
Stephanie, then
information or
yeah,
you
they
do
should
not.
break that out.
Is
We
that
got- We
correct?
need something
We are
here.
still in the process
gotta
of
go.
conducting interviews and an investigation.
Some of my colleagues have texted me over the last couple days, bipartisan, about whether you should lose your job. And I've been quiet on that question because I wanted to see what you were going to do today. In my opinion, you do need to be fired immediately. And it is because this is gross incompetence.
Wow.
And the fact that it's been 9 days, and these are simple questions to answer. I'm quite sure if I asked any one of my
He's
kids
not
if
wrong.
they got in trouble, I told them to give me the details, I would get more answers from them than I'm getting
I
from
kind
you
of
right
feel
now.
sorry
And that's
for
what's
her, and then I
frustrating on a
remember that someone got
bipartisan
killed,
basis,
and then I
on a
don't feel sorry
nonpartisan
for her.
basis. This is a joke. And Director, you're in charge, and that's why you need to go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yeah.
Chair now
fuck.
recognizes Mr. Goldman.
It's
from
my
New York.
apartment, but I know nothing
Thank you, Mr.
exactly.
Chairman.
I get paid 300,000 a year, and I don't know anything.
I want to follow up and just
She
understand
just
a
took her
little bit
cyanide tablet.
why there is so much information about this out in the public, including some from you and your communications team, and yet you're here pursuant to a subpoena under oath in front of Congress, and you're unable or unwilling to answer some of those same questions. Can you just explain why you are answering so many fewer questions here than you have to the media?
I'm answering the questions that I'm able to answer based on the fact that there are multiple ongoing investigations.
But you have answered some of these questions.
I mean, I kind of feel sorry
Previously,
for her. I can't imagine being
correct?
just getting your ass chewed
To the
out
public,
by
to the
everyone
media.
on TV. But then
Which questions?
Someone
Well,
died,
for
so
did
she
you have an interview
deserves
with
it.
ABC
Hey,
News?
that's why
Yes,
you
I
make the big bucks.
Did you explain the interaction
Right.
between local law enforcement and the Secret Service, and that local law enforcement was responsible for securing the perimeter of the building where the shooter was?
I said that the Secret Service is responsible for designing and implementing and executing the security plan, and that we rely on the assistance of our local law enforcement partners to assist us with that plan.
Let me ask you something. Were you given any instructions about what you can and cannot answer here today?
My ability to answer questions is solely reflective of the fact that there are multiple ongoing investigations, and I want to make sure that I provide accurate information that doesn't conflict with any of those investigations that are going on.
So is it your view that you can't talk about anything that happened that day until those investigations are completed?
My view is that I want to make sure that this committee and the American public gets correct and actual information.
And so is it your view that that can only happen after the completion of the investigation?
It is my view that when the investigations are complete, that we will be able to share that information.
And how about before that?
If I have factual information that I can share before that, I absolutely will.
I'm guessing you have factual information as to when the suspicious
What's up, Am?
photograph, the photograph of the suspicious person was relayed to the Secret Service. There's a timestamp on that text message or whatever it was, correct?
Sir, I'm sure you can understand that when you're dealing with text messages, emails, and other communications, the timelines don't always match up.
Not really if they're timestamped, but let me move on. Because you have acknowledged that this was a major
What's up,
security
Bill? Welcome
failure.
back.
Is that right?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge that it was a major security failure not to secure the rooftop of the building that the shooter shot from?
I believe at this time that the rooftop was provided Overwatch. I acknowledge that we are unaware at this time how the individual was able to access the roof.
Overwatch meaning from other counter sniper, other higher points?
Correct.
And so was it a failure then that when that shooter was on the rooftop, that Overwatch did not identify him before he fired his shots?
I don't have the timeline of how the individual accessed the roof, where they accessed the
That's
roof,
not the question.
or how long they were on the roof.
Let me ask a couple things quickly. You have testified here about all the resources that the Secret Service needed to deploy to protect the NATO summit and all of the leaders here. Is that right?
Yes.
We got
Biden.
Biden
Did you have to
19.
rely more on local law enforcement because of the NATO summit for this event?
The Secret Service routinely works with local law enforcement at every event. It doesn't matter whether it is a NATO summit, NSSE, the RNC. In
No, but that's not my
Milwaukee.
question. Obviously, there's a natural give and take as to, I'm sure, how many agents you deploy and how much you rely on local law enforcement. Did you have to rely more on local law enforcement because there were fewer Secret Service assets available because of the NATO summit?
No.
I hope we get answers before the completion. I don't like the fact that the media has received far more answers than Congress has. If this is a function of getting your ducks in a row, I assume you have access to a lot of these reports and a lot of this information, and you should have come prepared here today. And I would just want to flag, Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, that I want to just point out one thing that my colleague from Texas was talking about when he said he recreated the shooting twice with an AR-15, and he had a 94% success rate, 15 out of 16 shots. I don't know why that doesn't convince him that we should get rid of AR-15s, but clearly we need to do something about the prevalence of AR-15s and weapons of war on our streets. And I yield back.
Chair now recognize Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, I guess 60 days is the time of the investigation. Is that the information that you've put out, or where did that come from, 60 days? Or is that just information that the committee members are talking about?
I stated that.
Yo, I hate to do it, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go vertical, y'all. I'm going to go vertical because I'm trying to get subs up. And when you go vertical, you just get put in that algorithm where you can get more subs. So I'm going to end this one, and I'm going to immediately start up another one. I hope you can join me. If you're mad at me, I understand. I know vertical sucks, but man, I got to get my subs up. I got to crack 1,000. So that's what I'm going to do, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me, and come join me on the vertical, man, if you want. So I do appreciate that, and that's what's up, because I can't get any viewers. I know, I'd be mad too. But come come on over. So that's the top. Don't be too mad. Put your big boy pants on and let's do it. Let's go vertical. All right, y'all. See you in 10 seconds. Or do we have a new comment? Bye. Yeah, Chuck, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. All right, here we go. We're going to end this one.